Welcome to the Advantech Technical Training. In this topic we will talk about the common sensor introduction and signal introduction. The outline of this presentation will go through these 5 chapters. First is the comprehensive perception. In this topic we'll talk about what is the actuator and the sensor. Second, we will going to talk about the sensor type and the theory. After all the introduction, we will talk about more detail feature about the analog and digital signal and sensor. Now, we will explain about the comprehensive perception. What is the comprehensive perception? We will take humans' action for example. If we see one cup on the table, we will use our brain to send the signal to the arm. And the arm will stretch, then use hands to take it. Now it will have one question: how does we know we have already take the cup? The answer is we will use our eyes to check. For the machine is same. We will separate all these action to 4 part. The first one is controller, it like human's brain. It will send the command to actuator, then the actuator will control the mechanism to do the action. In the end, it will use sensors to detect and feedback the signal to check the action is finished or not. In this picture we can also separate it to 2 part, one is command part and the other is feedback part. For the command, it is used to send the command to control the action. In feedback part, it will use the sensor to detect the action status. In the following chapter, I will introduce some of the common sensors and their feature. In this chapter, I will talk about the sensor type and theory. First, we will going to introduce the sensor. What is the sensor? I think all of you have already know about it. The sensor is one kind of device used to detect the change of physical signal. Most of the sensors will also include the transducer. Therefore, it can also transfer the physical signal to electronic signal. Such as thermocouple can use to transfer heat or temperature to voltage signal. Or pressure sensor can use to transfer the pressure signal to voltage signal. In this word we have so many kind of sensor, so first I will use working theory to separate them to the following 6 groups. First group is mechanical sensor, it can be used to measure position and velocity signal. Second group is electrical sensor, these sensors can be used to measure voltage, current, and resistance signal like strain gauge. Third group is magnetic sensor, it can be used to detect magnetic field strength. Next group is radiant sensor, it can be used to measure electromagnetic wave, ultrasonic wave or optical signal. In the end, it also have thermal sensor and chemical sensor. They can be used to measure temperature and pH signal. Following, I will going to introduce some common sensor about these different group sensors. First, contact displacement sensor is one kind of mechanical sensor. As below picture, it have spindle and probe. It will use probe to touch the object surface. Use directly contact way to measure the distance. Second, strain gauge is electrical sensor, it is one kind of composed metal. Usually it will used with Wheatstone bridge. When the pressure change, the resistance will also change. Third is magnetic sensor, like eddy current detection sensor. This kind of sensor is used to detect the distance between the metal object and the sensor. When the metal object approaches, electromagnetic induction will generate an eddy current. The last kind of sensor is radiant sensor. The most well-known product is ultrasonic wave detection sensor. The ultrasonic wave can use to measure the distance between sensor and object. Like the fishing boat, we'll use it to check which place have more fish. In this chapter we will using signal type to divide the sensors. Include analog signal, digital signal and communication signal. For the analog signal, it is one kind of continuous signal, like voltage signal 0 to 10 volt, current signal 4 to 20 milliampere, pressure signal, and so on. For the digital signal, different with analog signal, it only have 2 status, on and off or 0 and 1. like switch, relay, optical switch. And there also have some another kind of sensor is use communication signal, like RS-232, RS-485 or Wi-Fi. For the following chapter, we will going to talk about some analog and digital sensors. The first common analog sensor is infrared distance sensor. This sensor have two part, receiving part and sending part. From sending part, it will send the infrared signal to the object. And receiving part will get the reflection signal. Through this way to measure the distance between the object and sensors. Second analog sensor is displacement sensor, we can also call it potentiometer. The working theory about displacement sensor is like variable resistance. When the resistance change, the output voltage will also change. The third kind analog sensor is pressure sensor. It can use to measure the pressure signal. When the pressure increase, the output voltage will increase too. And the pressure sensor is three wiring connection, as the wiring diagram show in right hand side. In this page, we will going to talk about three analog sensors which are used to measure the temperature. The first one is thermocouple. It have J-type, K-type, R-type and so on. The user can base on their measure temperature to choose the corresponding sensor type. The second type of temperature sensor is PT100. In 0 degrees Celsius, the resistance is 100 ohm. When the temperature increase, the resistance and voltage output will also increase. The last kind of temperature sensor is PTC thermistor. The complete name is positive temperature coefficient. That is mean when temperature increase, the resistance value will increase too. On the contrary, there also have NTC thermistor, which working theory is contrary with PTC sensor. In this page, there have some digital sensors. The digital sensors usually will only have two working status like on and off. For example, the infrared detect sensor and optical sensor. They all have sending part and receiving part. If there have some object cover between this two part, the sensor will output the on signal. On the contrary, it will output the off signal. There also have other digital sensor like limit sensor. This kind of sensor usually will be used for user security. For some robot arm, this sensor will be used to alarm the user. When the motor trigger it, that is mean it close to the limit for the degree of freedom. For the proximity switch and read switch, in the following chapter we will have some real case to introduce it. There have some real case for sensor installation. The proximity switch and infrared detect sensor will be installed in the mechanism slide rail. In order to remind the user it reached the limit for the mechanism stroke. In the factory, it also have some analog sensor like temperature sensor. As the left below picture, the temperature sensor is used to measure the tank's temperature. Also for the daily life, we will use some sensor like read switch. This kind of sensor will be used to detect the door status. When the door is open or close, the sensor will output the different signal. For the last kind of sensor divide by the signal type is communication signal. Different with analog signal and digital signal, these kind of sensors is working with communication module. They can support multiple kind of protocol like EtherCAT, Ethernet, Profinet and so on. With communication module, it can connect multiple module at the same time. Decrease the wiring and maintenance time. After talking so many different kind of sensors, we will continue to think why we need the sensor. In this page, we will going to talk about it. Talking about the feature of the sensors. In the traditional factory, we will rely on the operators to help us collect the machine status. It will waste the human resource and sometimes the data may have some mistake. Due to the human may feel tired or uncareful. Therefore, with the sensor, it can help us to collect the machine status like temperature, electronic and so on. We only need to stay in the situation room and can get most of the factory information. Also can monitor the machine's working status and production capacity. In the following chapter, we will going to talk about the signal introduction. In the signal part, there have 4 different type, include analog input, analog output, digital input and digital output. All the items in this page like resolution, sampling rate, input-output voltage are the key feature for these 4 kind of signal. In the following page, we will have more introduction about them. In these part, we will talk about analog signal and feature. What is analog signal? Analog signal is one kind of continuous signal, like environment temperature or human's height all belong to it. Also you can refer the left-hand side picture, it is analog signal. And what is the digital signal? It can though discrete analog signal to get the digital signal. Like the right-hand side picture. For the analog signal, we have analog input and analog output. Analog input means it will transfer the real-world physical signal like temperature or humidity to digital signal. In order to let the computer can recognize the signal. And it will rely on the AD converter to transfer the signal from analog to digital. Then we can use the computer to process or store the signals. In the following page, we will talk about the key component for the analog input signal. The first feature of analog input is signal type. There have single-end mode and differential mode. For the single-end mode, voltages are referenced by the same ground as the left-hand side picture. For the differential mode, the voltage is referenced by 2 channels. Therefore the channel number will be half of single-end mode. User can base on their sensor or device to select the single-end mode or differential mode. Second analog input feature is resolution. Based on the picture, we can find out that when the resolution become higher, we can get more accurate data. In Advantech DAQ card, we provide 12-bit, 16-bit, 24-bit and 26-bit. The last feature are sampling rate and range. Sampling rate is one of the most important feature for analog input. We can refer the black line and blue line. For example, the black line is 100 Hz signal which we want to measure. If we only use 10 Hz sampling rate to measure, what will it happen next? We will get the wrong blue line signal. Therefore, choose the correct DAQ device with right sampling is very important. Usually, the sampling rate will be set 10 times higher than the target value. For the input range, it is another important specification for analog input. Due to every DAQ device have the fixed resolution. Therefore, select suitable input range is very important. If you select the input range smaller than the measure value, you cannot measure all the data you need. If you select the range higher than the measure value, it will waste lots of the resolution. For the analog output, it is contrary with analog input. It need to DA converter to transfer the computer digital signal to real-world analog signal. With analog output DAQ card, we can use it to output the voltage or current signal. Analog output can output the signal, therefore it can use to control the process equipment. Also can use to generate the waveform like the function generator. In this chapter, we will going to talk about the digital signal and feature. Digital signal is display though discrete time signal. And it only have 2 states, high or low. How to divide the digital signal to high level or low level? There have 2 different type, TTL digital signal and isolated digital signal. For the TTL digital signal, usually the high level will not over 5 volt. On the contrary, for the isolated digital signal, the high level may up to 50 volt or 60 volt. It depending on the DAQ card design. Why it can support so high voltage? That is due to isolated digital device have isolation protection design, therefore it can support the higher voltage. So what is the isolation? Isolation is on kind of circuit design. It uses optical coupling element to isolate signal source and measurement device as the left-hand side picture. This design can prevent noise or surge signal to damage the system. For the digital input, there have dry contact and wet contact. Dry contact with no polarity. It only have two status, open and close. Common dry contact sensor like limit switch, rotary switch and so on. These kind of device are very cheap and it can be easily used in many field. For the wet contact, it have polarity should follow specific connection direction. As the picture shown, the infrared detect sensor and proximity switch are belong to them. With this kind of device, it will have the wiring diagram. We need to connect the external power and follow the connection direction. Take one of Advantech DAQ device USB 4751 for example. This DAQ device can support dry contact and wet contact sensor. The high level for dry contact is open, and for wet contact is 2 to 5.25 volt. The low level for dry contact is close, and for wet contact is 0 to 0.8 volt. For the digital output, there have sync type and source type. Sometime we will heard the customer ask about the NPN type, that is equal to sync type output. We can also call it negative logic. When it have been trigger, it will get the low level voltage. And the PNP type is equal to source type output. We can call it positive logic. When it have been trigger, it will get the high level voltage. For the digital output, there also have another representative device is relay. Relay is one kind of circuit controller. It have solid-state relay, SSR, read relay, and so on. With relay it can use lower current to control high current. Also can be used to protect the circuit. As the picture shown, it have 4 different form type A to D. And Form A, Form B is more common. Form A is normal open. In normal situation the circuit is open. And Form B is normal close. Contrary with Form A, the normal circuit situation for Form B is closed. The last digital output device is status light. These device usually will be used in the factory to monitor the machine working status. With the data acquisition device, status light and the sensors, we can easily transfer the machine status to the computer. Combine with the SCADA system, it can finish the whole industrial Internet of Things application. Thanks for your attention. Hope this course gave you a basic concept of common sensor and signal. If you are interested in advanced concepts and hands-on, you are welcome to join our product training courses. You will get a return with fruitful knowledge and skills. See you next time. Have a good learning day.